I'm 105 years old, and I've been to more funerals than I can remember. At some point, they stopped feeling like events and started feeling like a pattern. Familiar faces, familiar prayers, different names on the stone. You stand there long enough, and you begin to notice something unsettling. It's not just that people leave, it's how little separates the ones who do from the ones who don't. I used to stand there, hands folded, listening to people whisper the same things. He was so healthy. She did everything right. He never missed a day at the gym. And yet, there we were. I stopped counting after a while. Friends, neighbors, people I grew up with, people I worked with, even people I didn't like very much. One by one, they all stepped out of the room, and I stayed behind. That's the part no one tells you about living a long life. It's not just extra years, it's extra goodbyes. People started noticing. Reporters came first, then doctors, then the kind of people who carry notebooks and already think they know the answer before you open your mouth. They all sat where you're sitting now, leaned forward, and asked the same question in slightly different ways. What's your secret? They always said it like there had to be one, like it was something I kept in a drawer and only took out for special occasions. And I gave them an answer. I told them what they wanted to hear. Clean food, simple meals, no junk, plenty of water, regular sleep. They would nod as I spoke, writing quickly, satisfied before I even finished. You could see it on their faces. Relief. They weren't really listening. They were confirming. Because if the answer is something simple, something controllable, then it means they're safe. It means they can follow the same rules and expect the same result. I used to believe that too. When I was younger, I thought discipline was the difference between a long life and a short one. I thought if you controlled what went into your body, you could control what happened to it. But here's what I started noticing. The people who followed every rule didn't stay any longer than the ones who didn't. I had a neighbor, strict as a clock, ate the same breakfast every day, walked the same route every evening, never touched sugar, never missed a checkup. He used to look at me like I was careless, like I was wasting something valuable. He was gone before 70. Another man I knew smoked like it was his job, drank more than he should have, laughed too loudly, stayed up too late. No schedule, no discipline, no plan. He made it into his 90s. You see enough of that, and something begins to shift, quietly at first, then all at once. You start asking a different question, not what are they eating, but what's actually keeping them here. It took me longer than I'd like to admit to let go of the first question. There's comfort in thinking life is a formula. Eat this, avoid that, follow these steps, and you'll arrive safely at the end. But life doesn't move like that. It never did. My name is Walter. I was born in a house that doesn't exist anymore, on a street that's been renamed twice. I drove a taxi for 41 years. Same city, same roads, different faces getting in and out of the back seat. I've watched people at their best and at their worst without them even knowing I was paying attention. That's the advantage of being the driver. People talk when they think you're not part of their world. They confess things. They complain. They rehearse conversations they're too afraid to have. And if you listen long enough, you begin to notice patterns there too. Not in what people say they value, in what they actually live. I remember a man who rode with me every Tuesday morning for nearly 3 years, always in a rush, always checking his watch, always talking about what he was building, what he was chasing, what he would finally enjoy once he got there. One morning, he got in quieter than usual. No phone calls, no plans, just silence. Halfway through the ride, he said something I haven't forgotten. I think I missed it. I asked him what he meant. He looked out the window and said, I spent so much time getting somewhere, I didn't notice I was already there. He didn't ride with me after that. I heard later he got sick, didn't last long. That stayed with me not because it was dramatic, but because it was familiar. I had heard versions of that sentence my whole life, just said differently. I'll slow down next year. I'll spend more time at home after this project. I'll call him when things calm down. There's always something just ahead, something that feels more important than the day you're currently in, and most people never catch up to it. They just keep moving the finish line. I did it too. For years I thought providing was enough. I worked, I came home, I did what was expected. From the outside it looked like a good life. stable, responsible, predictable. But there's a difference between being present and just being there. I didn't understand that until much later. Back then, I thought the body was the thing you had to take care of. Feed it right, move it enough, give it rest, and it would carry you forward. What I didn't see was everything else quietly wearing down in the background. Not all damage shows up in a test result. Not all decline is physical. Some of it is slower, harder to measure, easier to ignore, and far more dangerous, because you can feel fine while you're losing something you won't know how to get back. That's the part no one writes down on the list, and that's the part I didn't understand until it was almost too late. There was a time when I thought I had everything arranged the right way. Work on one side, home on the other. Responsibility handled, bills paid, routine steady. I woke up early, left on time, came back when I was supposed to. If you had asked me then, I would have told you I was doing well. And in a way, I was. But there's a quiet kind of failure that doesn't look like failure while you're living it. It looks like stability. It feels like progress. And it hides in repetition. My wife, Margaret, used to watch me in the evenings. I had a chair by the window, same one I still sit in now. I would come home, eat, sit down, and disappear without ever leaving the room. Not physically, mentally. Still thinking about routes, fares, conversations, problems that weren't in front of me anymore, but refused to let go. One night she said something that didn't land until years later. "Walter, you come home every day, but you don't arrive." I remember nodding like I understood. I didn't. Because from my point of view, I was doing everything right. I wasn't out causing trouble. I wasn't neglecting my responsibilities. I was there. But being there is not the same as being present. That difference is invisible at first. It doesn't cause an argument. It doesn't break anything immediately. It just creates a small distance. And then it grows, day by day, moment by moment, until one day you look around and realize you've been living next to your life instead of inside it. I saw that happen to more people than I can count. Men who worked their whole lives to build something, only to retire and have no idea what to do with the time they fought so hard to earn. Women who gave everything to their families, then sat in quiet houses wondering where everyone went. People who thought purpose was something you postponed until later. Later is a dangerous word. It stretches, it moves, it convinces you there's always more time than there actually is. I used to drive a man home every Friday evening, same pickup spot, same destination, same tired expression on his face. For years he talked about what he was going to do once things settled. Travel, rest, fix his relationship with his son. One Friday he got into the car and said, "I think things finally settled." I asked him what changed. He said, "Nothing, that's the problem." He had reached the point he'd been waiting for and there was nothing there. No energy left, no urgency, no clear sense of who he was without the chase. He stopped calling for rides after that. I heard he spent most of his time sitting at home, watching television, waiting for the day to pass. That kind of waiting does something to a person. It doesn't just affect your mood, changes how you move, how you think, how you wake up in the morning. When there's nothing pulling you forward, the body notices. People think aging is just time. It isn't. It's also direction, or the lack of it. I didn't understand that until I retired. 41 years of driving, and then one day, nothing, no passengers, no reason to leave the house at a specific hour. At first it felt like relief. No alarms, no traffic, no pressure. But relief, if you sit in it too long, turns into something else. The days started blending together. Morning coffee turned into afternoon sitting, which turned into evening waiting. For what? I couldn't have told you. I just knew something was missing. Margaret noticed before I did. She would pass by, pause for a second, like she was about to say something, then keep walking. Not out of anger, out of patience. She had been waiting for me to see it on my own. Weeks went by like that, then months. And if I'm being honest, I could feel myself fading a little. Not in a dramatic way. Nothing you could point to. Just a quiet dullness, a heaviness in the day, a lack of reason. I had taken away the thing that structured my life, and I hadn't replaced it with anything. That's when it becomes dangerous. Because when your days have no shape, your mind starts to drift. And when your mind drifts long enough, your body begins to follow. I remember one morning very clearly. No different from any other, at least at the start. I woke up, made coffee, sat in the chair, looked out the window. But something about that morning felt louder. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was heavy. I sat there longer than usual, cup in my hand, watching nothing in particular. And for the first time, a thought came in that I couldn't ignore. If this is all there is now, how long do I keep doing this? That's not a question about time. It's a question about meaning. And once it shows up, you can't push it away as easily as everything else. I don't know why I stood up when I did. There was no plan behind it, no sudden burst of motivation. I just couldn't sit there any longer. I walked outside, into the yard we had both ignored more than we should have. There were weeds pushing through the soil, small signs of neglect I hadn't bothered to notice before. I bent down, slowly, and pulled one out, then another. There was nothing impressive about it, no feeling of transformation, but there was something. A small shift, a moment where I was doing something instead of waiting. I stayed out there longer than I expected, long enough for my back to ache, for my hands to get dirty, for time to pass without me watching it. And when I finally stood up and looked around, it was the first time in months that the day felt different from the one before it. When I walked back inside, Margaret was standing near the door. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. There was a look on her face I hadn't seen in a long time. Not relief, recognition. Like she had been waiting for me to come back. Not from work, but from wherever I had been hiding all those years. That day didn't change everything, but it changed enough. And sometimes, enough is all you need to start. I didn't transform overnight. That's the part people don't like to hear. There was no sudden discipline, no perfect routine that locked everything into place. The next morning, I still woke up unsure of what to do with the day. The difference was smaller than that, but it was real. I went back outside, not because I had to, and not because I felt inspired, but because I had done it once, and something in me knew that mattered. I pulled a few more weeds, not as many as the day before. My back complained sooner. My hands were slower. It didn't feel important, and yet it was. That's how purpose begins, though most people overlook it. It doesn't arrive as a clear mission. It doesn't introduce itself with certainty. It shows up quietly, disguised as something small enough to ignore. A short walk, a phone call you've been putting off, a task that doesn't seem urgent but somehow stays on your mind. Most people wait for something bigger, something that feels worthy of their time. And while they wait, nothing changes. I stopped waiting, not in a dramatic way. I didn't make a list or set goals or announce anything to anyone. I just started filling the day with small, deliberate actions. I began walking again, at first just to the corner and back, then a little further, then a little more. I started noticing things I had passed for years without seeing. A crack in the pavement shaped like a river. A dog that barked at the same hour every afternoon. The way the light hit a certain window just before evening. These weren't important things, but they kept me connected to the day I was in. And that matters more than people think. Because when you lose connection to your days, time stops feeling like something you're living and starts feeling like something you're enduring. There's a difference. One keeps you here, the other slowly pulls you away. Margaret and I started talking more, not about anything profound, mostly ordinary things. What needed fixing, what we saw outside, memories that came up without warning. But there was a shift in how I listened. I wasn't waiting for the conversation to end so I could move on to something else. I was there, fully, and that changed more than anything I had done before. Years passed like that. Not quickly, not slowly, just steadily. The routine stayed simple. The garden, the walks, the chair by the window, coffee in the morning. Nothing impressive. Nothing you could turn into a headline. But it gave each day a shape. And that shape gave me a reason. When Margaret passed, that reason was tested. There's no preparing for that kind of silence. A house doesn't just get quieter. It changes. The spaces feel different. The air feels different. Even time feels different. The morning after, I woke up at the same hour. Habit doesn't disappear just because everything else does. I made coffee. 2 cups. I don't know why. I just did. I set them on the table and sat down. For a long time, I didn't move. The second cup stayed there, untouched, slowly losing its heat. That was the moment, more than any other, where everything could have stopped. It would have been easy to let the days collapse into each other, to sit in that chair and wait for time to pass the way I had before. No one would have blamed me. But I had learned something by then. Small reasons matter most when you have the least strength to find them. So I stood up, not because I felt ready, but because I understood what happens if you don't. I took the cup, poured it out, rinsed it, and set it back where it belonged. Then I went outside. The garden was quieter, without her voice coming through the window, but it was still there. So I worked. Not for long, just enough. Then I walked. Not far, just enough. Then I came back inside and sat in the chair again. The same chair, the same window, but not the same man who had once sat there waiting for life to begin. Grief doesn't leave. It changes shape, softens at the edges, becomes something you carry instead of something that stops you. And if you keep moving, even in small ways, it moves with you instead of against you. That's something no list will ever tell you. People still come and ask about food. They want specifics, measurements, certainty. And I understand why. It's easier to control what you eat than it is to face how you live. But if you're listening to me now, I'll tell you the truth the way I wish someone had told me earlier. Take care of yourself. But don't confuse that with the reason you're here. The body follows the life you give it, not the other way around. If you wake up with nothing pulling you forward, no routine, no connection, no small reason to step into the day, it won't matter how perfect your diet is. You'll still feel it. That quiet drifting, that slow disconnection, and over time, that's what takes people long before anything else does. I'm 105 years old. This morning, I woke up at 6, made my coffee, and sat in this chair. I looked at the empty one across from me, like I always do. I still go to the garden, though I don't stay as long. I still walk, though not as far. I still notice the light in the afternoon, not because these things are big, but because they are enough. If there is any secret at all, it's this. Don't spend your life preparing to live. Don't wait for the right moment to arrive. Give your days a shape, however small. Stay connected to the people who are still here. Say what needs to be said, while there is still time to say it. And, when the day begins, find something, anything, that makes it worth stepping into. Because in the end, it's not the years that keep you here. It's the reasons you find to keep going through them.